Welcome to organizing the design, marketing, assessment, and follow-up for educational offerings. That is a lot, but it is a lot to do every time we host a webinar or a workshop or other educational offering. So we're so happy to share with you today a planning resource we've designed for webinar and workshop facilitators. I'm Catherine Guevara, Associate Director of Clinical and Translational Research Education Programs.
And I'm Karen Busa, Program Specialist for the SECTSI Workforce Development Board.
We're coming to you from the Education Resource Center at SECTSI at the University of Southern California. During our time together today, we'll accomplish two things. We'll identify ways to optimize the preparation of educational offerings per recommendation. And again, those educational offerings are typically webinars or workshops. We will also plan updated workflow for hosting an educational event. We will show you our updated workflow, and hopefully there will be something there that you can use to update your own.
So to start off, let's talk a little bit about our workflow and what worked well before. What we used to do is send out an email to our presenters asking them for their information regarding the upcoming event. We would ask them for their name, for details of the event. We would ask them for objectives and any other information in general for them. What didn't work so well was maybe we would get back just their name. That didn't include their title. Maybe we would get back not the correct or complete detailed information regarding the event.
So all of this led to us creating the resource we're going to share with you. We'd like you to pause for a moment and reflect on what's already working well when you offer an educational offering, whether you are the ones that are putting this event together or you are the facilitator or guest presenter. Also reflect on what is challenging for you for doing this. Okay, welcome back from that pause where you reflected on what's already working for you well with hosting your educational offerings, as well as the challenges you face. Hopefully you will share the challenges we faced, and we'll also find ways to connect with our resource in order to optimize your educational offerings like we have done. We would like to highlight 3 parts of the resource we're offering that functions like a template that we ask facilitators and presenters to complete and submit for us. The first section is the design, where we ask the presenter or facilitator to provide for us specific and measurable learning objectives, as well as the activities that they're going to do during the session that makes the session participatory. And those activities demonstrate that the participants are practicing and applying the skills of the learning objectives. We will also focus on marketing, describing how we now get more accurate biographical and photo information, and how storing all of this in the REDCap system helps us to access the data. Finally, we'll go over assessment and follow-up, because there are now 2 different ways that we are measuring the participants' experience. Through learning questions, such as comprehension of content during the session, and through longer-term impact questions as we follow up with them at a later date. Let's start with the design of learning. Learning objectives are crucial to an effective educational offering. Before we created this new resource, we were receiving learning objectives that simply were not learning objectives. They were often starting with verbs like understand, learn, and know, which are mental states. They are not measurable. We hope that they would continue to grow with the participant throughout their personal and professional lives. Instead, we wanted specific and measurable learning objectives that could be directly tied to practice activities during the session, where the facilitator would be able to tell that the participants are practicing those skills. So when we guide the facilitator or presenter to provide more specific learning objectives, we get ones that start with specific verbs related to Bloom's taxonomy, which is a resource we provide to help the facilitator craft their learning objectives. We're able to tell the truth about what participants can actually do, typically in a 90-minute session, such as identify something, define something, apply a concept, or create a plan for something. Next, we ask the facilitator or presenter to focus on the activities that directly show evidence of these learning objective skills. So before, we would mostly have facilitators that would take up the entire 90 minutes talking, and we wanted to shift it to more participant engagement and interaction. This is usually done by providing a Zoom workshop rather than a webinar. A webinar limits the features that participants can use to interact, whereas a workshop provides more features, such as the ability to do breakouts, discussions, chats, and polls, which are all practice activities or ways for the participants to engage with the learning objective skills. This is what it looks like when the facilitator or presenter fills out their learning objectives. Now they are guided to do so, they are given examples, and they are provided with a linked resource on how to write better learning objectives if needed. And this is what it looks like when they enter their assessments or their activities that they will take the learners or participants through during the session. They are also provided with examples that other presenters have really used in other sessions.
We've also streamlined our marketing approach. With regards to the biographical information and the photo. So before, we had to look up a presenter's information. We go online, we do a Google search or whatever, and we find information, but we couldn't really guarantee that it was accurate. So our goal was accuracy. Now with our resource, the facilitator can provide a link to their bio as well as their preferred photo. Because we use RedCap, the information can be stored. So before, we had event questions that were obtained from a simple email requesting that information. Now, our goal was to collect that data and have a storage repository so that we can refer back to any of that information. So now, with the use of RedCap, we are able to generate or print out reports as well as analyze any trends in who our speakers are, what the information is covered, and so forth. Here's an example of what that the questions look like in the RedCap resource. So we're able to ask questions like the name that the presenter prefers, the title, the use of pronouns. Some presenters prefer this information, as well as accurate biographical information. Here's an example of what the RedCap form looks like. It's a simple 4-sheet form. All of the information that we require is detailed, or that we may require is detailed, and it's upfront, and there's no surprises. So the way that the form works is that some of the questions that will be asked, or some of the information that comes up, is dependent upon how an initial question was answered. So if you answer yes to one of the questions, then you'll have additional field, or might have an additional field show up. Here's an example of what the RedCap report looks like. Looks a little bit like a spreadsheet, if you're able to see it immediately on the screen within RedCap. And it gives or shows you all of the information that the presenter has completed. Additionally, this information can be sent to a spreadsheet format. So say Excel, for example. The nice thing about that is that you can further manipulate the data, maybe collapsing information or moving columns around.
Finally, we'll talk about more robust evaluation, perhaps our most important change. So before we started this new resource and system, we only asked participants about their expectations. Were they met? Did they enjoy the session? Would they recommend it? Things like that. But we have a goal to move towards measuring actual learning, meaning could they actually perform the skills that the learning objectives stated. And we do this now by asking the facilitator or preventer to please provide us with comprehension questions similar to quiz questions related to the content of the session and related to the activities they use to practice the learning objective skills during the session. That way, we add to our existing survey that still includes information about whether it met expectations and satisfaction, but also now includes 2 or 3 questions about comprehending the content. We also now ask longer term impact questions. Before, we didn't do this. We didn't have longer term follow up with participants. But it's crucial to collect data on longer term application of learning after the participants have finished the event and have gone back to work. So we now ask the facilitator presenter to also provide a few impact questions. What would they like us to ask the participants when we go back 3 weeks after, 6 months after, to see what they have implemented based on the session? For example, might they have published something? Perhaps they revised a course, or perhaps they have done a training based on what they learned. This is what it looks like when the facilitator or presenter is asked to enter learning questions. We explain what we'd like from them as far as comprehension or quiz questions, and we give examples that others have used. And here's what it looks like when we ask the presenter or facilitator to provide us with impact questions. Important here is that we let them know that they are not responsible for following up with participants. That is something we will be doing. However, we will be using their questions when we follow up with the participants after some time. And we give examples of things that they might consider to be impact down the line. We'd like you to pause now and review the provided resource. Again, it functions like a template that facilitators or presenters complete. And we'd like you to note one element that you could adopt to optimize your own workflow for educational offerings. For example, you might choose to optimize something about your assessments, and you'd say, we would optimize assessment by. Take a minute to pause and reflect on this. Welcome back. Thank you for identifying one element in our resource that you might use to adopt to optimize your own workflow for educational offerings. Moving on, we'd like to share the new CTSI workflow. It includes what it always has, meaning we start with a needs assessment to identify an appropriate event topic in demand and of need. We identify the presenter and confirm them. We still do that. But now, after that step, the presenter is asked to complete this planning resource. Again, that functions like a template. They're guided through the process of entering all of the information that we've been over. And we can see that this is a vital step now because it's tied to the next ones. The information we obtain is now more accurate, which helps us to provide better event marketing, and participants know exactly what they'll get if they attend a session. This also helps the presenter when they hold the event to be more organized and to remember that the participants will be asked comprehension questions as well as follow-up questions, and therefore it's crucial that they follow through with an engaging session where participants are able to practice the learning objective skills. And finally, holding the event and what participants do during it is directly tied to 2 types of surveys afterward. The survey that includes comprehension questions now tied to the content of the event they attended, as well as impact questions asked a little bit later after the event. Taking a look at our updated workflow and considering it, we're hoping you pause for a moment and select one aspect that you might adopt to update your own event workflow. Feel free to go back in the video recording and take a look at our workflow right now. Okay, welcome back. Thank you for reviewing our workflow and perhaps finding a way to adapt something we've done to update ours and put it into your own workflow as you update yours. Thank you so much. Please keep in touch and contact us with any questions about using this resource.